Thank you. I'll go to the floor. We'll go 1, 2, 3. Take 3 questions, let the panel answer, and then take another round.
Yeah, this is a great panel. If Alfred Stepan was on it, it would be an ideal panel. So many questions, but I think the best question for a Washington, D.C. audience is related to the example and success of Tunisia that we often talk about, but the pushback that we get from people who say, what type of success is Tunisia when it produces such high numbers of recruits for ISIS? So I'd like to hear from the panel your own political, sociological, historical analysis of what is going on within Tunisia that is producing such high numbers of recruits for radical Islam.
We'll go to Yes.
No, it's not.
Oh, hold on. Try now.
Is there a button or something?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Steve France here. I'm just here personally. I think it's a best kept secret, the struggle and importance of the Tunisian struggle. So once it gets out, I think you have a great story to tell. But I was wondering if anybody could touch upon the relationship that Tunisia's leaders have of this effort with the rest of the Arab and Islamic world. Turkey's struggling now, for instance, and you said that it might be 100 years before you get another opportunity of this magnitude. Is that how it's perceived by a lot of people in the rest of the Islamic world, that we're looking to Tunisia, and if it goes down, we're all going to really take a hit? What is that process? Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I have actually a short comment, but if you want to elaborate on it.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, no. My name is Anwar Haddam. I was elected member of parliament in Algeria in '91, the first Arab Spring. And I'm currently the director of the Taraqi Center for Strategic Studies. Actually, my concern is regarding democracy. It's supposed to be reflecting, a certain society, okay? That we have American democracy, European democracy, and we are trying to have the region's democracy or Tunisian democracy. So I hope that the expert and those who are studying the region will look at the democracy in Tunisia not from this Western society's perspective, but rather from the Tunisian society perspective. What are the concerns of the society? What is the social fabric of that society? Because basically democracy is, we need to have 2 basic principles that the popular will, the political authority should be based on the popular will, and that there is separation of power, not to fall into. So the popular will is very important, and we have different societies. As we are looking and as we are trying to address this new phenomenon of diversity within the same society, we need also around the world to accept that diversity. We are not same societies, but we still have the same right and the same process that will express the right and the wish of our societies, and not the societies of those who are looking at us. So without going into details, I hope that you understand this. And thank you.
The panel, if you want to take come from Andrew, Monica.
I can take Nader's question.
Yes.
Because I've done quite a lot of research on jihadist recruitment in Tunisia and what's kind of come to be known as Tunisia's jihadist paradox. In other words, with Tunisia, you have the most democratic country in the Arab region. It's the first Arab country to ever create its own homegrown democracy, labeled by Freedom House and the other democracy rating indices as a real democracy. So it's the first Arab democracy. Turkey, by the way, was never rated a full democracy. Tunisia has been rated as such. But at the same time, about 6,000 Tunisians have gone to join ISIS, which is the most in absolute terms for any country. But in relative terms, relative to Tunisia's small population of only about 11 million people, it's huge. So what's the explanation? I think people with a stake in the old regime and people with a stake in not seeing Tunisia move forward have tended to try to turn this into a story about it's the revolution's fault, blame it on democracy. And you've even seen some journalists write stories in the Washington Post or the New York Times over the past years with titles like, democracy brings jihadism or something of this nature. But I break the explanations down broadly into two categories, and they work together. There are pre-revolutionary factors and post-revolutionary factors. The pre-revolutionary factors. Tunisians participated disproportionately in prior waves of jihad. So in Afghanistan against the Soviets, in Iraq against the Americans, in Bosnia. And these leaders, these Tunisian leaders in prior waves of jihad were extradited back to Tunisia in the mid-2000s, where Ben Ali put them into prison, mostly into the same prison, Mournagia prison, not in isolated chambers, but they put them together with a lot of non-violent Salafis, where these leaders were able to radicalize a lot of people. Also before the revolution, there was extreme religious oppression in Tunisia. Specifically, the center-right Islamist party, Ennahda, was made illegal. Tens of thousands of its members were imprisoned. They were forced into exile. And this created a real gap on the center-right. There was also a lot of oppression of religious institutions of learning that created a poverty of smart religious discourse. And at the same time, there was quite a lot of space given on the more extreme side for people to foment their own mishapen interpretations. What happened after the revolution is you had other post-revolutionary factors intersect with all of that bad groundwork that had been laid to really create an explosive situation. And just mainly to quickly run through those, in February 2011, there was an amnesty that released all political prisoners in Tunisia. This was, remember, months before Ennahda got elected. So this was not Ennahda's decision. This was February of 2011. And the very faulty decision was made to consider Salafis as political prisoners, Salafi jihadists, including these old Tunisian al-Qaeda leaders who had been very active in prior waves of jihad. And these leaders came out and immediately took advantage of the political space to start recruiting. There was a kind of recession of the security apparatus, and into that space came a lot of these recruiters. The same factors also that drive a lot of Tunisian young people to commit suicide in very dramatic ways. We saw another self-immolation just last month. Or motivate them to get on boats and try to go to a better life in Italy, also drive young people towards a desperate act like joining jihadist groups. And I think the revolution also gave a lot of young people especially hope that they could be the vanguard for change, hope that change is possible. And then the situation in Syria, where photos were coming in every day of their Muslim brothers and sisters being brutalized by the Assad regime, was also a radicalizing factor. So all of these things combined.
Thank you. Quick comments.
Yeah. In addition to what Monica said, I agree with her completely. I just want to make another comment. And I think that Rashid Ghannouchi said it, but I agree with him too, that these are the children of Ben Ali. That's the word he described. They are the fruits of the dictatorship of Ben Ali for 25 years. They are not the children, they did not grow up in democracy or grow up after the revolution. They grew up for the last 25 years before the revolution. They were radicalized in those 25 years. They were, and radicalization is usually has two main reasons, in my opinion. First one is hopelessness, losing hope in general in life. And of course, we've seen that for 25 years before the revolution. And lack of Islamic education. This is a big problem in Tunisia because Tunisia has basically no Islamic education to speak of. And out of all the Arab countries, maybe even all the Muslim countries, it has the poorest education in Islam since Bourguiba, and then completely wiped out under Ben Ali. There's basically nothing under Ben Ali for 25 years. So these young people are hopeless, but they don't know Islam, so they're easy to recruit because they don't know Islam.
Naufal, you want to make a comment, or should we take more questions? Let's take a couple more questions. Oh. Do you want to
the other two questions?
Yes. You want to make?
Yes.
Okay, Naufal will answer that.
The first question was about the relation between Tunisia and the Arab and Muslim worlds.
How they are looking at Tunisia.
Do they see it as a model?
We must don't forget that Tunisia is a small country and have since always a kind of moderate diplomacy, and we have not that pretension that we are going to export our revolution and our models to other country. This is not our goal. We see ourselves as a unique experience. Maybe we will inspire other country to go our way and to fulfill and to pursue the same way that we did to establish democracy. But we have no this pretension to export our experience to other country, because this can impose us a lot of political challenges and put the whole country in danger. So I don't think it's clever to have this pretension to export our revolution and to repeat the experience of 1979, the Iranian Revolution. We are in another period of time with a different mechanism. We have our own way to deal with the relationship with the Arab country, Muslim country, and all the country of the world. The second question is very interesting with our Algerian friend. It's about the relationship between political party and the people. This direct. I know that Jürgen Habermas spoke about the procedural democracy. A democracy is based only on techniques and cold vote. This is not our way to deal with the Tunisian people. I think we try to be near the people, speak with the people. We know that the society is not one. We have different political aspiration, different political affiliation in the Tunisian society. We try to deal with all the people. Even me, in my constituency, I deal with the Nahdawi people, but I deal with other people who didn't necessarily vote for me, because this is my job, to represent them, not given to the vote they made in the election, and to enhance this strong relationship between the politician and the people, and to avoid to do politics in a very cold procedural way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to Alex and last question.
Hi, my name is Alex Norris from the National Endowment for Democracy. So a theme here, and a lot of times talking about the success of the Tunisian revolution, is the cooperation among political actors in the Tunisian political elite. And obviously that's been very helpful up to a certain point. But now, when we see sort of this growing disillusionment, especially among young people in Tunisia, with their ability to affect the political scene, is there such thing as too much cooperation? Is there a point at which parties should be looking to represent people's interests over, being in agreement with each other on some of these governmental and economic issues? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ahmed Ahmed, Minaret of Freedom Institute. I just have a comment and a plug. I appreciated very much Radwan's discussion of the economic issue, which I do think is a major issue that has to be dealt with. But I think the solution to that will lie less in foreign aid or even in foreign investment than it will with changes in the Tunisian economy and in the attitudes towards entrepreneurship. In particular, the problem of corruption is often due to rent seeking by the government. And I know from the history of Tunisia that has been a problem there, and I suspect it still is. The plug is this. The Minaret of Freedom Institute is working on putting together a workshop in Tunisia on this question, and modeled on the ones we did in Turkey back in the 1990s. So I ask anyone here who is interested in that project to come and see me afterwards. Let's exchange business cards and talk about how we can make that happen. Thank you.
Excellent. So you're all invited to come to Tunisia to attend the workshop. But I want to add a third question to this package, and then we can have the panel answer and then conclude. I think, Andrew, you spoke about the Nahda shift and shifting away from this Islamist kind of jilbab, if you will. It's this dress. But still, even experts who are studying in Nahda for so many years, they still call them Islamists, like Monica. So is it, are they failing in communicating what they're trying to do? Or is there a, because even other Islamist groups that are kind of putting question mark on them and they're saying that, is this just a strategy? Is this just a tactical move by them to fit in within the new political landscape?
I mean, part of it could just be habit. People refer to François Hollande as a socialist, even though he obviously isn't. So there's going to be a legacy of speaking about it this way. I would actually defer to our friend here to ask about what happens during campaigning. So it's one thing, obviously, actually I like the way that Monica brought this up, that one element of Nahda being a sort of a democratic movement is not only the way that it relates to the rest of the political system, but to itself. Its own decisions are exquisitely democratic, even again, to the point of Ghannouchi having to go down and beg people to vote against the exclusion law. I would turn the question back to see, when during election season, to what extent is campaigning still based on moral and religious appeals and that sort of thing. So I guess that's one element of the question. Why do we continue to refer to him this way? The other element of the question was, is this just a ruse that we should expect to see sort of down the line should the demographic strength change? How could that happen, right? I think when you look at one important element to why Egypt turned out differently from Tunisia, of course, we can talk about the army, we can talk about all kinds of, many, many things. But when you look at the Constituent Assembly in Tunisia had, 40% made up of Nahda? When you combined all of the Islamist parties in Egypt, it was something like 70 to 75%. So just simply structurally, right, without a coup, which Nahda is obviously not prepared for, you can't have a non-pluralist approach to politics simply on the basis of the demographics. So, I don't see how you could have a return of a stronger demands for the implementation of Sharia, changing the constitution. It's hard to imagine what that would look like outside of a kind of electoral politics in which appeals to identity or religious sentiment, become more prominent.
Thank you. Anyone wants to take questions?
Yes, I think the growing disillusionment Alex mentioned, especially among the young people, is a real problem. Is there too much unity between the parties or too much dialogue, which has not allowed any real progress? I don't think so, because I think the main condition for economic prosperity is political stability. If you don't have political stability, you cannot have economic development, and you cannot have growth or solve the problem of the young people and the disillusionment. So I think the focus is right, that we need political stability, which means that we need these two main political parties, Nahda representing the Islamic camp, Nida representing the secular camps and mostly the old regime. These are the two main political forces in Tunisia. If they don't work together, there is no political stability. And the government will not last even for 1 week if these two parties are not governed alone. And so they need each other. And I think, has that made it difficult to achieve things? No, I don't think so. I think on the economic level, for example, these two parties are very similar, and they have agreed on many of the reforms. What we are forgetting is that these reforms take a long time. These reforms are not easy. We know what they are, and almost everybody knows what they are. Certainly the State Department knows what they are, the Tunisian government knows what they are, the parliament knows what they are. To implement these reforms takes 10 years. It doesn't matter how much will you have or how much unity you have. It takes time. You're reforming a very big system. You're reforming, thousands of institutions. and laws that have to change. Thousands, literally thousands of laws have to change. Plus, you're reforming a whole culture. And again, this goes to the problem of corruption, because corruption has become part of the culture. It's not just laws or constitutions. So again, I go back to the problem that these transitions take a long time. These reforms, even reforming the economic situation, the economy itself, will need at least 10 years. And that's why I have been appealing for the last 3 years or 4 years for the international community to do its part, because I don't think that we have 10 years to wait for the economy to start creating jobs. It takes 10 years to change the economy, for the economy to start creating jobs. I can guarantee you that. So, yes, Imad, I agree with you that real economic growth has to come from inside, has to come from reforming the economy. And the economy has to start creating jobs and individual liberties and, entrepreneurship and all that. But it's going to take time to change all of that. Right now, it takes 2 to 3 years just to start a project or start a new company, because of the laws and the culture and the institutions and all that. You're not going to change this. You can push any button you want. It's not going to change. And corruption is a huge problem in Tunisia. But again, how can you solve this problem? It's not easy. It will take 10 years, in my opinion. And I've spent most of my time in Tunisia last years. To get rid of corruption is going to take 10 years. I don't think Tunisia has that time, that luxury of time. So that's my concern. And I'm telling you now that if Tunisia fails, it will be because of the lack of the international community to support Tunisia. Tunisians have done everything they can. Islamists and secularists and everyone in between have made all the sacrifices. We really cannot ask them to do more than what they've done. But this is a difficult process. It takes, again, you look at other countries. Eastern Europe, it took 15 years for Eastern Europe, or 20 years for Eastern Europe to become a democracy. You're not going to become a democracy or get rid of corruption in 1 or 2 years. But, Europe, Western Europe, and the United States helped Eastern Europe to transform to democracy. But that help for Tunisia right now has been very weak. It's not, you're talking about $100 million. What is that going to do? There are buildings in downtown Tunis that cost more than $100 million, one building. You're not really having an impact on the economy. Why isn't there a Marshall Plan for Tunisia?
Thank you. Monica, last word.
Sure. Alex, I think you pose a very good question. The dialogue of consensus often masks real hard-nosed arguments and interests. I see Tunisian politics as an isosceles triangle. And the biggest part of the triangle is the old regime forces. Call it Bourguiba's PSD party, Ben Ali's RCD, and now these forces are organized a bit under Nida Tunis, some under UTICA, the employers' union. It's dispersed. This is the biggest power in the country. And then the other two tinier ends are the UGTT trade union and Anatha. And historically in Tunisian politics, you've had the regime ally with UGTT, the leftist and the secularist, against the Islamist, to lock out the Islamist. And after the revolution, something very interesting happened recently, is you're seeing the other two sides of the triangle, the old regime and Anatha, start to ally and work together more. And this is quite revolutionary. Each side of the triangle has its own instincts for self-preservation and its own interests. And I think the economic reconciliation law is an excellent example of how a lot of the grievances that led to the revolution in the first place, that anger, sense of dispossession, isn't necessarily being reflected a lot in the current political configuration and debate, and for good reason, and I've written about this, but to answer your question very briefly, yes, you're onto something. About the Islamist issue, this poses a problem for me every single time
30 seconds.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Go.
I think it was mainly a label change, but that's not to say it was purely tactical. I think you could argue that Ennahda made the post-Islamist turn as early as 1981. It never advocated strongly for Sharia or an Islamic state, so we should have always been questioning our use of the word Islamism and our use of the word secularism to describe major tendencies in Tunisia.
Thank you. Last word of wisdom, Dr. Jamal?
So I will end by this. I think that the consensus is based on very smart phrase that said even a broken watch gives the exact hour 2 times per day. So and this is very interesting. But I will finish by this. Supporting Tunisia and supporting the transitional process in Tunisia is not about feeling. It's not about principles. It's not about special relationships with democracy and so on. It's a question of interests. Our friend, especially Western country, must have the conviction that it is in their best interest to support the Tunisian experience. Because if, and God forbid, if this experience falls, it will open the doors to a very dangerous situation in the region. And it will have a deep impact in the northern side of the Mediterranean Sea. That's why when I speak with responsible from Western country, I evolve to speak about feeling and question of principles and love of democracy and these great words. And I prefer speaks about using the language that the country understand, the mutual interests. And it is in our mutual interest to support this experience and to enhance the democracy in Tunisia. Thank you.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking this great panel.